Today, we're going to dig into an ancient story that is basically a masterclass in modern-day strategy. It's all about a shepherd who got stuck in a totally impossible situation and used a brilliant and, let's be honest, a pretty bizarre method to come out on top. So, how do you pull it off?
I mean, it's a question we've all faced at some point, haven't we? You're outgunned, the rules are totally unfair, and the other person is holding all the aces. What do you even do? Well, believe it or not, the answer might just be hiding in one of the oldest stories ever told.
Get this. We're talking about a story that mixes shrewd business negotiation, what looks like a surprisingly deep understanding of animal breeding, and a huge dose of what you might call cosmic justice. It's the story of Jacob versus his father-in-law, Laban.
All right, so let's set the scene. For 20 years, think about that, 20 long years, our guy Jacob has been working for his uncle, who's also his father-in-law, a man named Laban. For 14 of those years, he was just working to marry Laban's daughters. And for the last 6, he's been managing Laban's flocks and making him an incredibly wealthy man.
So after 2 decades of this, Jacob finally puts his foot down. He's like, enough is enough. He's got a huge family of his own now, and he's built absolutely nothing for them. You can just feel the frustration in this question, right? He's done building someone else's empire. It is time to get paid.
So Jacob goes to Laban to negotiate his exit package. And this is where the story takes a wild turn. He doesn't just ask for, a percentage of the flock. Nope. He makes what has to be one of the strangest salary proposals in history.
The deal he offers is just extraordinary. He basically says, look, don't pay me anything up front. In fact, go through the entire flock and take out every single animal that has spots or speckles. Leave me with just the plain, solid-colored ones. My pay, my entire wage, will be any future baby animals that are born with those rare markings. I mean, if you're the sneaky Laban, this has to sound like the deal of a lifetime.
And they got super specific with the terms. An ancient commentator, Rashi, breaks it down for us. Speckled meant animals with tiny little dots.
And spotted? That meant bigger patches of color. So the contract is precise, like down to the genetic level. And to top it all off, Jacob says that to prove he's being honest, any animal found in his flock without these markings can be considered stolen property. He is literally betting his family's entire future on producing a genetic long shot. So Laban, who, let's be honest, has a pretty solid history of cheating Jacob, hears this, and he must be thinking, is it my birthday? He agrees on the spot. But of course, being Laban, he can't just take the win. He has to rig the game even more. And this is where you see just how stacked the deck becomes. The deal was already a steal for Laban, but he goes one step further. He doesn't just separate out the speckled and spotted animals. He has his sons march them a full 3-day journey away. Why? To make absolutely sure there's zero chance of any genetic cross-contamination. He leaves Jacob with what is, for all intents and purposes, a genetic dead end. And if you thought that was bad, this next detail really shows you what kind of guy Laban is. According to Rashi, Laban didn't even leave Jacob the good, solid-colored animals. Oh no, he gave him the dregs, the weak ones, the sickly ones, the ones that couldn't even have babies, the absolute bottom of the barrel. So now the game isn't just rigged, Laban has basically made it impossible to even play. Okay, so let's recap. Jacob's got a flock of sick, plain-colored animals, and his entire future depends on them magically having speckled and spotted babies. Sounds impossible, right? Well, this is where Jacob reveals he's been playing a different game all along. And this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? How on earth does he pull this off? Well, the answer is this really fascinating 2-layered strategy. It's part practical action, and part, well, something else entirely. Okay, so layer 1, the physical stuff. Jacob does something kind of weird. He takes these tree branches, peels stripes into them, and sticks them in the water troughs right where the animals are mating. And believe it or not, they start having streaked, speckled, and spotted babies. But it's not just some magic sticks. There's a clever strategy here. He only does this with the strongest animals, so his new flock gets the best of the best, while the weaker ones, they just breed normally. Presumably for Laban's share.
So you have to ask, what is going on here? Is this some kind of folk magic? The idea that what an animal sees while it's mating can change its baby's coat? Or, and this is a wild thought, is it some kind of ancient intuitive grasp of epigenetics? The story doesn't really say, which forces you to dig a little deeper for the real answer.
And that deeper layer comes out when Jacob finally lets his wives in on the secret. He tells them, hey, you know those striped branches? That wasn't the real reason this is working. The real secret, he says, came to him in a dream. In the dream, he saw that the male goats mating with the flock were actually streaked and speckled. They were carrying the exact genes he needed, even though Laban had marched them miles away.
And then, in the dream, an angel explains the why. This isn't just some random genetic lottery win. No, this is divine intervention. It's about balancing the scales. The angel basically says, I have seen everything Laban has been doing to you, so justice is now being delivered through genetics. The striped branches, that was just Jacob doing his part. The real engine behind all this success was cosmic justice.
So what happens when you combine clever strategy with a bit of cosmic justice? The results are, well, they're staggering. Jacob doesn't just make a decent wage. He completely turns the tables on Laban.
What we're seeing here is a massive transfer of wealth. That flock of defective animals Laban dumped on him, it's now a gold mine. Jacob, the guy who started with literally nothing, becomes an economic powerhouse. We're talking huge flocks, servants, camels, the works, all the signs of being incredibly rich back then.
But you know how it goes? That kind of success, it brings new problems. Laban's sons are watching all this and they are not happy. They don't see divine justice at play. They see their dad's wealth, their inheritance, literally walking out the door on four legs. The vibe gets really hostile really fast. And Jacob knows, okay, it's time to go. But before he bolts, he does something really important. He talks to his wives, Rachel and Leah. Remember, these are Laban's own daughters. And in this incredibly powerful moment, they back Jacob 100%. They basically say, our own father has treated us like strangers. He sold us to you and then spent all the money. They have zero loyalty left for the guy who exploited all of them.
And that's the final piece of the puzzle. The whole family is united. They don't see this wealth as something they've stolen from Laban. They see it as wealth that God has rescued for them. And with that kind of moral clarity, they pack up their family, their fortune, and they get ready to make a run for it.
So what's the takeaway here? Was Jacob just a master strategist? A vessel for divine justice? Or was he both? I mean, he was clearly clever, right? He used observation, selective breeding, this mysterious technique. But the story makes a bigger point. It insists that his strategy only worked because it was lined up with a just cause. Maybe the ultimate way to win a rigged game isn't just about being smart. Maybe it's about making sure your smarts and your hard work are on the side of justice. Now that's a strategy worth thinking about.